so you can coach yourself on. Another reason we crash is repeating mistakes. So if you're the rider that goes out there and you're not paying attention to that, you go to the brakes and it's doing this every time, you know what? We're on the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're on the way to a crash. So repeating mistakes. So we'll say the front brake or the grip on the front is made up of two things. What are they? Brake pressure and lean angle. So going into the turn, we say it's the same thing on the back, but the exit, it's lean angle and throttle. Lean angle and throttle. So the same thing. We have to load the tire before we work the tire. How many of us know riders that do that, or we hear that at the stop sign, or at the stoplight? We hear the rider.
Bike night.
You know what I hear? I hear 40 points, 40 points, 40 points. What happens if I'm leaned over at 85 points and I do 40 points?
You're going to slide out.
I'm going to slide out. Yeah. Well, what is a high side? Has anybody heard that term, a high side?
Getting launched over.
Yeah, so we lose traction in the rear, and then it catches, and then when it catches, it throws us over the top of it. Usually it's, pretty quiet, and then we hit the ground. So we'll say, same thing. We have to load the tire before we work the tire. How much is my hand moving here to accelerate? So here's the whole sport. The whole sport, we can say this one thing and we can be done, is when do I go to the brakes? Either track or street. When do I go to the brakes?
When you're nervous.
When you get nervous, right? I mean, we're going straight. There's nothing for us to do. It's the most comfortable place we can be. Even on the track, you know, if we're doing 140 miles an hour down the track, it seems counterintuitive, but we can take a break there. We can tuck in under, you know, on the track and just completely take a break. On the street, you know, not much is going on when we're going straight, but we see a curve coming up, and what happens? We know we've got to take action down there. So as it's coming up, I start getting nervous, then I go to the brakes. How long do we stay with the brakes? Before I came to the school, I'd try to set my speed, whatever that meant. I guess that means I'd look through the corner and I think, I guess this is a 50-mile-an-hour corner, so I want to be at 50 before I tip in. Okay, that's good. I'd release all my brakes. What happens to my traction? I've given it away. The forks extend, they run wide, they make us want to go straight, and then I tip in, slow look, press, roll, I open the throttle, right? That's not how we do it. Go to the brakes when we get nervous. We stay with the brakes until we're happy with two things.
What are they? Shampoo,
direction.
Speed and direction.
Speed and direction. So that means we've got the brakes on past the tip-in point. We're carrying the brakes with us. At a lot of the schools, we'll see riders, we see them, you know, maybe brushing the corner a little bit, but we see the brake lights on past the tip-in, we can stop watching them. We'll stop watching that rider and we'll watch somebody else. We see the rider that goes in and no brake lights, it's like, are they gonna, oh, ooh, they made it, ooh, wow, right? So we'll say, stay with the brakes until you're happy with the speed and direction. And there's something to think about there too. A lot of us will let those brakes go a little too early because we're starting to get bored with the speed. But we still need to stay with those brakes because we're not even close to direction. And we need to still get that traction going at the front tire. When I feel the weight going forward, I feel traction now. Before, you know, when I first came to the school, I was thinking about riding a bicycle. When I touched the front brake, all I could think about was tucking the front. Now, when I feel those 2-3 points in the front, it feels comforting. I know the traction's there. As I start to release, you know, I start to be a little bit more concerned. So now my thought process is stay with those brakes till I'm happy with speed and direction. But even if I become a little bit bored early, I stay with them a little further. I'm okay if I overslow it, right? That's the right end of the equation to be on for a street rider. And then I might pick up a little bit of neutral throttle. If we don't do anything, the bike continues to slow. So enough to maintain that speed. And I don't really get to accelerate until two things come together. That I see the exit and take away lean angle. So before I can take away lean angle points, you know, or to take away lean angle points, I can add throttle points to it. And if I'm on the track, by the time I'm straight up and down, I can be at wide open throttle if I want to. So go to the brakes when I get nervous. Stay with the brakes until I'm happy. Speed and direction, being especially mindful of direction. Maybe some neutral throttle, and that varies, right? I mean, if it's a big sweeping turn, I might
Be longer.
I might be a neutral throttle for a lot longer. I can't truly accelerate until I can see the exit and take away lean angle. And what do we mean by see the exit? If I'm coming around the corner here and I'm starting to see this, right? The road's starting to run straight. I've just come around to right. Well, I can see where I'm going now. When we teach on the base, we say, you know, you can't pull the trigger until you're aimed down range, right? And it's the rider that opens the throttle too soon or too abruptly that runs wide. So we have to have the patience and the discipline to wait until the bike gets pointed straight. So if we're sitting on the bike, it would sound... Coming up to my first turn, I roll off onto the brakes. I'm never rolling off here and then picking my fingers up. I roll off onto the brakes, load the tire, work the tire, dip in, trailing off, mindful of that last 5%. I pick up a little neutral throttle, see the exit, take away lean angle, accelerate out. Next turn, roll off onto the brakes, load the tire, work the tire, dip in, trail off, neutral throttle, see the exit, take away lean angle. Throttle in the front brake. Sometimes we'll overlap throttle in the rear brake, but never front brake and throttle. So when we're on the brakes, we're all the way off the throttle. All right, that sounded smooth. It doesn't take much hand movement, does it, to really get the throttle open. The initial throttle input is the transfer of weight. And then once we've transferred it, then that gets us ready to drive it out, to load the tire. All right, the next thing. All right, getting it? Awesome, very cool. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is something we call radius equals miles per hour. We've had a few people call us and say, well, that's not the exact formula. It's a shortcut for how to think of it. You know, when I was looking at the 8-day reports, like I said, the riders are crashing and dying in two places. That's at the intersections, and oftentimes it's fail braking. Rider doesn't have enough skills, straight line braking, threshold braking. And the other is going wide in a corner. Going wide in the corner. How many of us have heard, when in doubt, throttle out? You know, that's sort of a thing. When in doubt, throttle out. Slow look, press, lean, you know, this acronym. We're going to do a little bit of myth busting on that. You know, one of the things we discovered in the riders going wide in the exit is they're at the wrong control at the wrong time. So what we'll do is we'll get Rich to get out here and we'll get one lean angle and one body position and one throttle input, and then I'm going to ask him to accelerate. If he doesn't hear me, I'll wait till he's looking my way and I'll do this, and that'll mean for him to accelerate.
I feel good about that because I was just a passenger on my own bike.
Okay, so we know that the radius is shrinking as you're decreasing speed. If there was only some way to control the rate,
yes.
What would that be?
So I think if you allow me to use my brakes,
let's do that.
I can control the rate in which it tightens up.
Let's do that. This time, add a little bit of brake. All I had to do was just squeeze the brakes. My front tire was heading towards his neck. Squeezed the brakes and just missed his head. If I'd have been that rider that was already into the throttle, I'd have ran over that guy. I mean, so as far as being safe, this is by far best practice for safety and for speed.
Absolutely.
So the next thing we want you to do is actually get out here and feel it. So get on your bikes, pick out a piece of real estate, do the same thing Rich just did. Get it in a fairly tight circle, so we're talking one body position, one lean angle, one throttle input until you get in a stable circle, maybe one lap around. Then add 1 point. You all know how to have the 1 point throttle hand. Add a point and see what that does for the radius. Get in the circle again. Roll off. See how that affects your radius, and roll off and pick up brake, front or rear brake. 1 point. There's quite a bit. You're not going to get the bike stopped in near enough time. So ideally, the best stop is, you know, if it's a threshold brake, is recognize the threat, roll off to the brakes, or already have the brakes covered, load the tire, 1/10 of a second, and then build up big brake pressure to 100 points in the shortest amount of time possible. If you're the rider that takes a 1.5 seconds to get to 100 points, what's going to happen to your braking distance? It's going to be longer. If you're the rider, and it's a lot of us, that has never gotten to 100 points, you don't know where 100 points is, you don't get there at all. Let's say that you just get to 30 points, 40 points, what's going to happen to your stopping distance? It's going to be further. And what we do in the first part of this exercise matters the most. Let's think about this. Vehicle pulls out in front of you, or your stopping exercise, where are you doing the most feet per second? At the very beginning, right? Whatever your speed is, when you go to the brakes, that's where you're doing the most feet per second. There's other schools that talk about emphasizing what you do at the very end. Well, at the very end, you're doing the least feet per second. So whatever efforts you're making there matter a lot less than the efforts that you're making at the beginning of this. So, but what we're doing here, two things, giving you the opportunity to get up to speeds. They'll say, well, what speed should we be doing this? Anywhere from 40 to 90, I'd say, right? But wherever you're comfortable. One time in Yuma, we're doing the beta test and had a rider that wouldn't go over 30 miles an hour. And we don't want to get people to, you know, go past their comfort zone, but I did want to point this out to the rider. I said, you rode in today. What speeds were you traveling coming in? Like 70? Okay, but think about this. You're not comfortable going to the brakes at speeds past 30. What do you think is going to happen when a vehicle pulls out in front of you at 40 or 45? How well do you think you're going to do? So I would encourage you to get your speeds up either here or somewhere else in practice after this, and bring somebody with you for safety. But you need to get your training up to the point to wherever you're riding in your real world riding life, if it's 50, 60, 75 miles an hour, you need to have the ability to stop that motorcycle from that speed, meaning load the tire, get up to 100 points quickly, and bring it down to the stop. The other thing we're working on here is our trail brake. What do we see there? If we were going to critique Rich, what would we say? Why not just use engine braking, right? It's a form of slowing. We'll say, yeah, it's true, but it's just not adjustable, right? This is all you get. There's only so much. So yes, it does slow the bike, does everything that a slowing bike does, reduces its radius, but not adjustable. So we still want to use the front brakes to control our, as we say, our geometry or our steering. All right, so the eyes up help anybody to be able to see it all a little bit sooner. Having the eyes up, kind of the key to speed. And also on the street, somebody pulls out in front of you, you want to be able to see it as quickly as possible.
Following Rich is great. Where are you dictating your braking? I'm following Rich, which he's amazing. But how would I dictate my braking? Is it through the apex, or is it through? Well,
I mean,
because I'm following his brake lights.
It's more speed,
right?
More brakes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's always by principle. Absolutely, it's you brake when you're nervous, right? That's absolutely correct. I mean, that's not a gimmick. We're all braking when we get nervous.
Because if you're more confident, you're braking later.
Yep. Oftentimes you're braking later, or you're braking lighter. If you're braking
Maybe
lighter,
longer.
you can carry it longer. Yeah.
But you bring up a good point. If you're behind a ride, if you and your buddies are in a line, and you can see his or her brake light when they enter, but you're going to wait till you get there. You're not going to brake or accelerate when they do, because you're not in the same spot, right? So you
Are
following
you
me.
saying in conjunction with just riding behind somebody?
Right, right. Or I mean, you know, this is tight and technical. If I were to do this by myself, I could probably think of a million different braking points.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I'm saying is, how do I dictate the proper line for braking on such a tight technical kind of course or track?
It's all still the same principle. It really is just, you know, brake when you get nervous. Same principle. We're starting from the outside, coming to the inside fairly close. We're always trying to open up the radiuses.
Yeah.
And sometimes one turn leads right into the next, so we're not working our way all the way back over.
Yeah.
In those spaces where it makes a quick right, left, right, you don't get anything by getting all the way over back and forth the track. Oftentimes in those spaces we're looking for a straight line through there. So we'll never get further back over than halfway before tipping it back into the next. Most of that is track craft, which over in the 2-day school we talk about entry corners, exit corners, vital points. If we tip in early, like an early tip in will put us out high. A late tip in will put us out low. And we always draw the track backwards from where we want to exit. Because that's on a track, that's where we're getting the most feet per second as we're going straight. So we'll take a straightaway, draw the line backwards, and we'll know that's our slowest point coming into that last turn. So not as applicable for the street, so we don't talk about it a whole lot over here. But yeah, there's quite a bit to know about that for track riding. But yeah, good question. The next thing we want to do, the next thing we think is really important, a tool that's very useful is body position. With that, we'll also talk about different ways that we steer the motorcycle. Why are the racers over there? Why are you seeing those guys over there, knee out, hanging off, body off? What are they doing? What are they trying to achieve with that?
Lessen the
That's right, yeah, they reduce lean angle, reduce lean angle. So what can you do with a motorcycle if it's standing straighter?
Go faster.
Yeah, you can use more brakes or you can use more throttle, and you're running less risk. You see a lot of riders out there on the track, you know, their body position's all kind of messed up, and rider behind them they're running an angle like this, and rider behind them at the same pace is running this. The difference is the second rider's using more body position. So just standing there, put your feet at about shoulder width, and then without moving your head, you can move your hip. Try to put some weight in your right foot. Kind of move your hip over, you can feel that some. Now point that right foot out like a 45-degree angle, and this is how we'll be on the motorcycle. Now take the head and put it over the top of the foot. Now you can put all your weight into that if you want to. You can take the other foot and even lift it up. You can put all your weight one side. And that's one of the ways we're steering the motorcycle. So you've got 2 gyros or 3, you've got the crank, you've got the 2 wheels going in one direction. The faster a motorcycle goes, the more stable it gets straight up and down, the harder it is to turn it, right? At 100 miles an hour, you're having to put a lot more pressure into the bars than out here at 10 miles an hour, right? So a way that we get a signal to the motorcycle to start to turn is the pegs. We call it the inside axis of the gyro. So by putting weight into that peg, it starts to turn it. It's not dramatic like the bars are, but it starts to send it a signal. So we'll weight that peg, and we'll take the outside knee and press it into the tank. And by doing that, that fires our core and lets us go kind of weightless on the handlebar. You know, over there and on the track, we're trying to point the toe, we're getting the knee out. On the street, we're often just trying to get the head off the center. You can see some riders move their butt back and forth, but if their head's in the center, you're not off weighting it. And you see that a lot, like on the new track riders. They'll move a lot on the bike, but they're only moving their lower body. So you'll see them sitting up, head in the center, left turn, right turn. Nothing's happening with the bike. You're not taking away any lean angle, and you're really not putting a signal down into the peg. It's not until you can get the head off of the center line you start to influence the bike. So if you're not used to this thing, don't worry about the lower body, you know, on the street ride. And we do it a little bit sometimes, but the most important thing is that's the most important thing is wide open throttle. Is getting the head off of the center line. Get the head off the center line a little bit. Relax the inside elbow. Put a little bit of pressure into the tank, and that will start to stand the bike up. How is that useful? You come around a corner, you need to take out a little bit more lean angle, add a little bit more brakes. If you're on a big cruiser, when I had my Harley, we used to do this demonstration where we would put it in a circle and drag the floorboards, and then just put your head over 3 inches, and it would go from to silent, just by putting your head over a little bit. The tire, before we work the tire, the 1-point hand, eyes up sooner, right? 2 up and 1 back. And this time, incorporate all that and work on getting the head off past the center line. And we'll be modeling it for you and exaggerating it a bit, so you can kind of see, when we go to the brakes, we'll set up, and then that gives us the room and the space to use our body to hang off the bike a bit.
Remember, this is your way of communicating with your bike. Your bike is going to go straight. We're supposed to start moving that upper body around. Look at that specifically the head and shoulders.
You know, I forgot one other thing that I've actually been working on quite a bit. So we say other ways to steer the bike. One way is to put weight into the inside axis of the gyro. That gives it a signal to start to steer. And then when we lean to the left, we're not thinking about it much, but we're actually putting a little bit of pressure on the inside of the bar, and that's counter steering. So it's counter steering, causing the bike to fall. Then oddly enough, the way to get the bike to really turn at this point is you have to let that go. The bike will want to not only straighten out the steering head, but as you're going, it will tighten up into the corner. So it's what we call finishing the turn. I was just at a track behind 2 riders, we're running the same radius, same speed, and they were struggling getting the apex, and I just took all my weight out of the handlebars by putting my knee into the tank, pressing that, and just no pressure, and just the bars turning in, and then the bike just kept turning. And I was on the curb as they were 2 feet out of it, and then I was able to get to the throttle sooner because I had direction and was pointed out. But it's the craziest thing. A lot of riders think they've got to keep the counter steering going, keep it tightening up. But you're actually fighting it at that point. All you need to do to begin with, the counter steer to get it to drop, and then it wants to come back in this direction, wants to come back to the inside. So you can play with that a little bit, but it means you're essentially not influencing the bars at all. You're not hanging on to them, you know, you're not putting any weight into it. Your points of contact to stay on the motorcycle are here and here. And this is just, we're saying that conversation your motorcycle wants to have with you, it's talking to you through the handlebars. You know, you're giving it this to get it to fall over, and then it is wanting to rotate back in, and you'll never feel that, you'll never notice that unless you can go almost completely weightless into the handlebars. Like, you're not steering it at that point, you're just feeling it turn in. Well, what if it was starting to run into the curb? How could we get it to not run into the curb?
The motorcycle, how it was designed. It was designed to turn with the forks compressed, right? Now we've got a touring motorcycle, right? So obviously I got my little feeler pegs still, right? You heard them touch down, right?
Yes.
You heard him touch down that one time. The very next run, do you think I was going faster or slower, or trying to get the same speed? Same speed. Well, what was the difference?
Body.
What Mark was talking about. You saw me, right? I ran out of clearance, so I have to do something, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So,
go back
something
to
else
your
I
point,
noticed
Mark.
too is each time you're going faster and faster and faster,
Yes.
I noticed that you were having to go to the brakes a little bit
Sooner.
sooner,
Yes.
but but your speed in here was pretty much the same no matter what.
Yes.
And I didn't hear you picking up the throttle and truly accelerating until you started to get direction.
Yes. So I felt that the safest thing for me to do is to, as we've been saying, going in on the brakes. I got to the point where I was at the slowest part of the turn, or the point of the turn you can also consider where I'm at the max lean angle, as you saw dragging my little curve feelers there, right? So it wasn't until I can see my exit, started to take away lean angle. Only then can I truly accelerate. But if you notice, I got to my apex and there was a little bit of, you could call it hesitation, we call it maintenance throttle. That, okay, I'm there, but I'm not perfect. I'm almost there, and depending on this is a pretty tight curve. In the real world, pretty tight curve. I could go in, I wouldn't have to hold it as long. But if it was a sweeper, I would have to hold it. I just have to be patient. Direction. Not there yet. Okay, now I got direction. Right. So these are the things that we're talking